And good day everyone. So, andito na naman tayo ngayon sa week 11 na tayo. We've gone so far sa ating Socio 111, week 11. Our topic right now is all about education. So, kung tatanong ka, what's the point of all of this? Pre-recording, discussions, everything. Pinag-aaralan natin. Of course, for us to become more and more educated. From the very beginning sa life natin, nang naisilang tayo, there is this mindset already in your parents na paano ko bubuhayin yung anak ko, ano yung papakain ko, ano yung gusto kong maging sa kanya. And one of that consideration sa isang pamilya is that paano mo niya mapag-aral yung bata niya. Okay, paano niya masustentuhan yung future ng bata. And that's how important na maging acquainted tayo sa topic na to. And of course, I believe socially, by nurture, education has helped us a lot to become an individual itself. Dito tayo natuto ng makipagkaibigan, makipaglaro, mag-aral, matuto, of course, baka magmahal. Yan, ganon. Okay, so we learn cultural expectation and norms, education, which are informed by our teachers, textbooks, and classmates. So you might remember learning your multiplication tables on second grade and the like. So example, meron tayo ditong education around the world. So these children in this figure are at the libraries in Singapore, where students are outperforming US students worldwide tests. So still mayroong competition na nangyayari dito. And accordingly, hindi naman talaga US lang yung pinamatalino sa lahat. Okay, so by the way, education is a social institution through which a society's children are taught basic academic knowledge, learning skills, and of course, cultural norms. Every nation in the world is equipped with some form of education system, though those systems vary greatly. Kasi actually, it varies kasi sa curriculum. Okay, so example, sa PE natin ng mga subjects, hindi, yung PE natin ngayon, simple basketball, table tennis, iba yun sa kanila. Example, in other courses, example in Philippine National Police, or in criminology course, accordingly, yung PE na nila, iba. Subjects, meron daw yung mga karate, yun yung about fighting skills. So, our system actually vary greatly. So, the major factors affecting education systems are the resources and money that are utilized to support those systems in different nations. So, hindi lang po government. Of course, the government has this program education to help us para mas maminusan yung gastos natin. Pero may mga schools talaga na they need more than what the government can have. So, oftentimes, like example, private schools, medyo mahal talaga. Kasi nga, may mga additionals kasi ng mga subjects yung private schools na wala sa mga, oftentimes, na hindi masyadong kinikater ng, ng government. Example of that course is maybe pilot, to be a pilot, and I think marine courses, and oftentimes, example, criminology, mostly kasi sa nalalaman ko, yung criminology, oftentimes private talaga yung nag-handle dyan. And medical courses, mostly private yung nasa on top. Kasi they have those engagement and connections which the government na hindi masyadong engage. So international differences in education systems are not solely a financial issue. Hindi lang sa money. So, oftentimes din kasi, of course naman, kung nag-aaral yung isang tao, ang dapat talaga i-consider is financial or budget. Kasi pag wala yan, wala din. Okay? Even though libre yung education, still, yung baon ng bata, pagkakainin, some allowances, miscellaneous fees, still there's the budget that says, of course, pamilite, parang fair, bayad sa sakay. Okay? The value placed on education, the amount of time devoted to it, and the distribution of education within the country also play a role of those differences. For example, students in South Korea spend 220 days a year in school compared to 180 days in the United States. So I think sa atin, we are more than Okay, so depende din kasi ito sa cultural ng isang country, no, kung paano niya dinidistribute yung education. Malay natin, hindi ko alam kung ano yung, mostly kasi sa kanila dito, kaya medyo maliit lang yung days nila compared sa atin kasi nga, meron sila other engagement sa example, yung iba dito siguro, they are learning their cultural language, and other people are almost busy, so hindi medyo makita. So depende, na iba-iba pala even in the United States, meron tayong 180. So students in Afghanistan head to school. The ACAF logo on his backpack represents a NATO-led security mission that has involved rebuilding. So ito yung isang NGO na nagtutulong sa kanila to rebuild there. So meron tayong tinatawag sa education natin na formal and informal education. So ano yung formal education? So ito yung mga describes learning of academic facts and concepts through formal curriculum. So yung formal curriculum na example, yung mga ancient Greeks before, ito yung matematika, siyensya, yung mga pinag-aralan na before, philosophy, and centuries of scholars have examined. So hanggang sa mga scholars pa talaga to before, hanggang na-learn natin ngayon, yung science and technology, mga ganun, matematika. But in contrast to that, we also have informal education. So, ano yun? Yung mga values, no? Yung mga studies about values, norms, expected, and maybe we say religion. We have this type of learning, of course, both normal and formal education system at home. So, yun yung kaibahan nila. Okay? So of course, at home, nakikita natin dito, mostly naman talaga is that first talagang teacher natin, di ba? First teacher natin, if may parents lahat, is yung parent or yung guardian natin, or yung sino nagbabantay sa atin, lola ba't lola. Parents teaching their children to cook, provide an informal education. Okay? Yun, cooking. Informal education siya. And of course, we also have cultural transmission, refers to the way people come to learn values, beliefs, and social norms of their culture. Both informal and formal education include cultural transmission. So, example, student will learn about cultural aspects of the student US. So, of course, di ba, sa pag-school kasi natin, oftentimes, hindi kakultura lang natin, no? We are varied, di ba? Example, in MSU or even in PASE, we have varied cultural backgrounds. Okay? Hindi lang siguro maranaw lahat. Even though hindi natin masasabi kasi na maranaw lahat, meron din sigurong taga-Tawi-Tawi, taga-Sulu, or Tausug, mga ganun. Culturally, we vary and we learn from that. Hindi lang siya napapasa. Example, cultural delicacies. Okay? Natuto namin kami mga Bisaya na kumain ng pater. Okay? Or ano ba yung mga pagkain ng Maranao. And of course, then you are also acquainted on our foods. So, isa na yan dyan sa mga natra-transmit. Example, yung pananalita. Example, pananamit. Okay, being conservative. And of course, maybe, you should also consider the way of thinking. Okay? And let's talk about access. Okay? So, access in education. So, makikita kasi natin dito, although, and access of education kasi hindi, another global concern is universal access kasi although education is for everyone, okay, education is for everyone, meron na tayong napasan yung parang lahat talaga pwede na mag-aral. This term refers to people, pero meron naman talagang, okay, in terms of location, okay, the access right there, even sabihin natin, lahat na pwede makapag-aral, there's no discrimination, okay, wala nang white or blacks, ganitong racial discrimination, but still, no, meron pa rin talagang problem in access. Example, may mga taong nasa bukid, nasa other province, na wala talaga, okay, and coming to the cities might be disadvantage to them. Kasi nga, they are not acquainted to the city, ano pang mangyayari sa kanila, and of course, the budget. And isa din sa connection dyan dito, sa access kasi, is difficulty of certain groups, especially in class, is the struggle in budget. Okay? So, yun talaga yung kung ano situation. Kaya nga, the government right now is for giving a lot of more scholarships, okay, in our education so that we also have, kasi, why we are studying this in sociology? Kasi, if this actually one of the biggest funding of the government is education, and if this part kasi, hindi to siya natugunan ng pansin, baka mayroon ng magka-aklas yung mga tao, hindi nyo sinusuportaan yung future ng pamayanan. Okay, so baka mag-aklas. And this is a big problem to the society. So indeed, this topic of education is more important. So in connection to that, no, balik tayo sa topic natin dito, meron tayong survey dito, data pala. Ito yung data ng, sa US yan dito actually, ano yung budget, no, budget ng every state ng US. No, ito yung Census Government Survey, Local Government Finances nila. Paano sila gumagasto annually? Okay, so ito yung mga gasto nila. Elementary to secondary per pupil current spending amount by state. Okay? Per pupil, no, by state. I think annual siya. So tignan natin kung annual ba siya. So anyway, so ito yung mga gasto nila. So New York. In New York, of course, mahal sa New York. Sabi dito dollars to. So hanggang sa DC, Washington DC, New Jersey, no, if you know that kind of state, Ohio, meron tayo dito pinakamalaki natin is $15,000 before pa to, 2006, 2007. And sa, I think Utah, $5,000 ang laki-laki na niya per pupil. Ito yung gasto ng bata. Grabe, I think per year na siya, annually. No, per spending great value in your state. So, of course, no, tanungin kita ngayon, ilan ba yung nagagasto sa atin? I think may times nga sa amin is that nakakapag-aral kami kahit wala kaming baon. Naglalakad lang kami ng mga almost 2 kilometers to 3 kilometers so that we can go to school. And right now, during this pandemic, it's challenging kasi nga hindi ka na makapag-aral kung wala kang internet connection and gadget. So, ganon. So, indeed, we need more funds. And of course, let's talk about theoretical perspective in education. So, ano ba yung functionalist? No? So, functionalists believe that education equips people to perform different functional roles. So, of course, sabi pa na ng functionalist or structuralism view, education has a function. Mayroon siyang function sa ating lahat. And conflict theory, of course, views education as means of widening the gap of social inequality. And feminist theories naman, it points out, it's still a conflict theory, but then it points out na there's relation to the gender na. Oftentimes, yung feminist parang na-under ng mga masculinity. And symbolic interactionism naman is, of course, there's a meaning to this classroom. Siguro, pag nakapag-aral ka, what symbol is that? Okay, maybe it symbolizes na you are rich, matalino ka, ganun. And kung hindi ka nakapag-aral, what symbol is that? Okay, so ganun yung natutunan natin and kung ano yung symbolic interactionism. So, functionalists use education as one more important social institution in society. They contend that education contributes to kind of functions. First function is manifest. So, function which are intended are visible functions. So, ito yung mga intended talaga. Parang, ginawa yan para dyan. Okay? Yung parang, education ginawa para matutong bata at makapagbasa. Yun yung mga manifest. Yun yung mga intended talaga. So, obvious. Yung latent naman or secondary function, aside sa primary function or manifest, which are hidden or unintended. So, yung mga hindi sinadya. Example, sa education, pumunta ka dyan, dyan mo nakita yung asawa mo, okay? Or dyan mo nakita siya, yung crush mo, ganun. Parang ganun lang. Parang hindi siya sinadya, okay? So, manifest function, there are several major functions of shaded education. First is, of course, socialization. Beginning in kindergarten, we learn to socialize. And socialization agencies are to teach children how to get along with others, of course. Kasi isa din sa function ng school, to socialize. And of course, isa din sa mga function dito is so that we can learn norms. Okay? May mga norms yung school, rules. Of course, social control. Mali-learn dito, of course, delegation authority. Sasubmit ka ba sa teacher mo? Parang sa pamilya natin dito, natutunan natin mag-submit sa kanila kasi di ba tinatawag natin oftentimes yung paralan na second house natin or second home kasi natutunan tayo dito yung social control. So, isa sa mga example dito, yung social control is that ito, sa paralan natin, we have our teachers. The teacher's authority in the class in the way in which education fulfills the manifest function of social control. So, di ba, times talaga, dapat sumunod tayo sa mga nakakataas sa atin. Yan yung nil-learn kasi we are preparing for greater companies. Magkapagtrabaho tayo doon and we are preparing for greater factories or organizations. And of course, we have this manifest or primary function education to follow delegated authority, katulad ng mga teachers natin. And of course, like sinabi ko nga, dito din yung education provides major methods of people upward social mobility. This is function referred to social placement, meaning yung pag college graduate na to, nakikita natin dito na yung estudyante moving closer na sa career niya. Okay, so education din yung nagdidictate dito saan yung social placement mo. Kung engineering ka, dun ka sa mga engineer na sa mga companies na yun. Kung social work ka, dun ka. Okay, so of course, dito natin nalalaman kung saan ka nababagay. Examples kung may times talaga na yung mga company nga 4-year graduate yung kinukuha, doon ka sa position na yon. So, education places us in a career we want. Okay? And of course, let's move on to the manifest latent or secondary function of education. So, education fulfills latent function. Example, you might notice an attractive fellow student when you give your particular interesting answer in the class. Catching up with him, making steps to date, speaks latent functions of courtship. Dito natin natutunan yan, hindi mga sinadya. Okay, hindi intended talaga. Kasi mostly talaga yung intended function or manifest function education so that we may learn something. Pero may iba din tayong na-learn. And oftentimes, siguro na-learn natin sa school na mag-blockball, manghopya, or mga ganun-ganun. That's the latent function of education. Na-learn natin sa education kung paano yung mga functions na hindi siya halata. Okay? Yan. Oftentimes, hindi siya natutunan ng iba. Kasi baka yung iba focus na sa manifest function ng ano ba talaga yung education, fix lang sila dyan, and they forget there is this latent function of education. So, let's discuss ano yung manifest function. So, manifest function of any stated function, yung talagang, yung sabi lang ng mission or vision nyo. Okay? Di ba? Yan man makikita. Example, Piazzi aspires to be a world-class institution to help students, ganito ganyan. Okay, to learn, o ganito. So, yan yung manifest function kung ano lang nasa vision, mission. Yung example, socialization, transmission of culture, social control, placement, and culture innovation. Yung latent function naman, hidden, unstated function, with sometimes unintended consequences of courtship. Okay? Panliligaw. Social networks, working with groups, creation of general gap, political and social integration. Okay, so mostly ganyan. Okay, so manifest and latent function of education. According to the functionalist theory, education contributes both manifest and latent function. Okay, so starting each day with the Pledge of Allegiance is one way in which students are taught patriotism. So, yun yung tinuturo sa school. And of course, meron din tayong in a view of conflict theory. Ang view ng conflict theory, do not believe public schools reduce inequality. But sabi dito, rather they believe that education system reinforces and perpetuates social inequalities arising from differences in class, gender, and race. Nakikita kasi ng conflict theory dito na since iba-iba yung races, class, gender, and ethnicity, dito nagkakaaway. No? Iba-iba kayo, nagkakamiron ng riot, bubugan, bullying. So, ito yung nakikita ng conflict theory, which is so true. Ganun talaga, no? Conflict theory sees education system as means that those in power stay in power. No, sila yung politician, yung ama, ina, mayaman sila. And oftentimes, yung mga baba, nabubully. I'm not biased this, I'm a victim of bully before. So, totoo siya. Nangyayari talaga siya. Okay, so, ganun yung mangyayari. Okay, so, of course, we also have situation leads to social class reproduction, intensive studies by French Pierre Bourdieu, research how cultural capital or cultural knowledge that serves as currency that helps or navigate one culture alters the experiences and opportunities available to the students. So, meron din natawag tayo na hidden curriculum, which refers to the type of non-academic knowledge that one learns to informal learning and cultural transmission. So, of course, meron tayong curriculum sa ating mga kurso, di ba? And of course, meron tayong hidden curriculum, yung mga hindi non-academic na tutunan natin yung knowledge. We have tracking, points of tracking, o formalized sorting system placed under track. So, may mga ganun-ganun tayong, di ba, example. advanced versus low achievers, yung mga crack, di ba? Crack students, mga science-ay, mga ganun. Kinakrack natin nila, so dyan na nagkakameron ng conflict. Mas matalino pa pala sila kasi nga may labeling na nangyari. Of course, IQ tests have been attacked for being biased. Sabi dito. Kaya ngayon may mga nabuo ng mga emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, maraming intelligence kasi accordingly, this IQ test is so biased. So, nakikita naman ng feminist theory, of course, it is also a inequality, but then here comes genders. Oftentimes, sa mga schools talaga, accordingly, even before talaga, it's so rampant before na yung mga lalaki lang yung mga nagkapag-aral, unlike now. And of course, yung symbolic interactionism, hindi lang mawala sa atin. No? Example, yung education talaga, it creates and it gives symbols to other people. So, example, what connotes when mapasok ka sa science-ay? O what connotes pag nakapagtapos ka ng pag-aaral? What does it implies? So, maybe matalino ka, maybe ibang tao hindi matalino. So, yan yung nangyayari. Nakakamiron ng symbol na oftentimes, pag nilagyan natin ng label, nagiging bias siya sa iba. Okay? So, of course, meron din ditong idea na credentialism. So, yung credentialism talaga embodies certificates or degrees show person has skill. So, ito talaga yung oftentimes, di ba? Pag nakapagtapos ka ng pag-aaral, mag-apply ka ng trabaho, okay, ano yung credentials mo? Yan yung tinatawag na credentialism. Natitignan talaga kung ano yung qualification mo, may certificate ka ba nito, what's your level of education, and that these certificates or degrees serve as symbol din. Kasi, ay, matalino to. May credentials. But actually, right now, Google and I think Microsoft, they are not so particular with that. And that's big company, Google and Microsoft. So, hindi sila masyadong accordingly, so nabasa ko lang na article, hindi sila masyadong wala kang credentials. Ang sa kanila yung results-based kasi sila. No? Meaning, kung may results-based, meaning, pag may mapapatunayan ka, may maresulta naman yung trabaho mo, at wala kang credentials, well, you are qualified. Sa atin kasi, hindi na naging result-based, we are credential-based. Kung wala, oftentimes, siguro mangyayari dyan kasi may credentials na wala nang gawin. Anyways, and of course, let's talk about the issues in education. Okay, so ano yung mga issues sa education natin? So, ito yung, anyway, I don't know, because this President Eisenhower sent members of the 101st Airborne Division from Kentucky to escort Black. Ewan ko anong nangyari dito. I think there was this conflict na nangyari sa kanila dito. So, Head Start. So, oftentimes, Head Start is still active. Successfully today was developed to give low-income students an opportunity to make up their school deficit. The program progress academics and their school. So, ito yung nangyayari. So, yung Head Start program, binibigyan yung mga student ng opportunity na makapag-start sa education nila. So, busing. So, yung busing is program involved bringing student to school outside their neighborhood. So, parang sinasakay sa bus, nilalabas yung estudyante. So, ganun yung nangyayari. So, to bring racial diversity. So, nagkakameron ng diversity doon pagpunta na nila doon sa program. So, oftentimes, ano yung nakikita mo dyan na mangyayari sa education. So, of course, we also have this in our issues in education. We have here also No Child Left Behind. Requires states to test the students. So, ito yung nangyayari. May mga test tayo before, di ba, high school. I think not yata yan, NAT or INCAT, ano ba yan? Yung pinapatay kayo sa elementary ng exam na to, I think it's on regional siya yung command dyan. At saka kung sino itong manalo dyan, malaki yung budget. And oftentimes, there are cheating that's happening. Bakit? Kasi oftentimes kasi dito sa mga exams na to, ito yung punto, No Child Left Behind. Pag malaki yung budget mo, ay yung score nyo, malaki yung budget. And oftentimes, kung maliit yung score ng isang paralan, baka pa having their funding cut off. Okay, baka pa i-cut na yung nangyayari dyan, especially in US. And of course, dito, nangyayari din yan. So, teaching to the test. So, describes curriculum focuses on equipping students to succeed in standardized tests to direct mental body education goals concept learning. So, nangyayari dito, ito yung standard. Okay, ito yung standard. Pag hindi ka makapasa sa standard, wala ka. Okay? Teaching to the test. You are teaching students to the test. By the test. So, ito yung nangyayari. Oftentimes kasi yung education, ito din yung dapat nating pag-iisipan ng pansin kasi oftentimes education, they are only teaching us what to think, not how to think. I read that as in one of the philosophers. So, ganyan ba talaga? Yung tinuturo lang ba education kung ano yung tinuturo niya or hindi ba siya nagtuturo kung paano mag-isip? Okay? So, I believe I'm an educator itself by myself, but oftentimes din yung nangyayari, di ba? Pinapabasa lang sa inyo yung pinapabasa inyo. And they are just teaching us what to think, no, not how to think. And it's so sad. So, of course, bilingual education, oftentimes, we are teaching language. May mga issue din tayo dito na oftentimes hindi alam ng gumagamit yung mga teacher, yung students ng mga language na hindi nagkakaintindihan. So, there's a need for bilingual education. Hindi lang pwede, hindi pwede yung isang language na dapat talaga yung, dapat talaga yung dapat talaga equal lahat. Yung language na gamitin nyo, maintindihan sa lahat. Of course, charter school, ito yung mga schools na na-assign sa mga sa governing public schools, and teacher training. Oftentimes kasi ito yung pinaka-challenge sa schools. Oftentimes yung mga teachers natin, kasi teacher na, wala na daw silang, siguro, naliw na lang lahat. No, hindi. I myself, I'm a student in master's degree. So, because I really want to pursue academe. So, according yan sa CHED, I think section 6 or 8 yata yan, and faculty development program, yun yung sabi dito, na hindi talaga pwedeng instructor ka na kami, mag-stop lang kami sa knowledge na to. Of course, we must pursue higher education. Kasi nga, hindi lang to nakakatulong sa aming credentials, it also help us as instructors na maging equipped and more effective. No? Kasi yung natutunan namin na higher dyan, oftentimes, yung knowledge na natutunan namin dyan, of course, mahal. Ganun. Pero, natuturo din namin siya ngayon sa student namin. Okay, so, ito din dito, social promotion. Of course, nakapagtapos ka na, gagraduate ka na. Okay, affirmative function, no? So, ito yung sa college dito, affirmative action has been subject to debate. Primarily, it relates to admittance to school students. Oftentimes daw, yung pinaka-affirm lang daw, pinapapaboran, may mga pinapaboran daw yung mga university or mga schools, kung sino yung pinapapasok nila. Okay, may mga priorities daw, kumbaga. And oftentimes, kasali na rin dito sa issues in education is rising of loan debt student. Kasi nga, mahal mag-aral talaga. Especially in even in public schools or in private schools. So, tumataas yung utang, umuutang si Umi, si Papa, ganun. Tumataas yung utang, nagli-lending, naglo-loan. So, ganun. So, homeschooling, of course, puso siya sa mga artista. Okay? If you are familiar with those celebrities whom you have been following, nag-aaral yung iba. Okay? But, nag-aaral sila homeschooling lang. Ang mahal yung homeschooling kasi nga, I think walang homeschooling in public schools kasi of course, mahal. And ang ma-afford mo lang, may mga homeschooling program, yung mga private schools, tumatanggap sila ng homeschooling program, pero mahal yon kasi nga, yung nangyayari dyan, limited students lang dapat. And oftentimes, yung mga teacher pa yung pumunta sa bahay para doon tinuturuan yung bata. Okay, so oftentimes talaga personal. So, parang ganon. So, nagturo yung teacher sa isang bata, oftentimes malaki sana yung load niya, pero kinuha mo siya. So, dapat malaki yung offer mo. So, mahal talaga ang homeschooling. Yung mga nakaka-cover lang dyan is yung mga pinakamayayaman. And of course, let's move on to our next topic, and government and politics. Okay, kasi of course ito, when we are talking about society, sino yung nagli-lead ng ating society? Government. And what is that kind of leading? Politics. So, ito yung may picture dito, yung picture of, I don't know what's the name. Prince William, I guess, I think. Prince William and, ito. dubbed the wedding of the century by journalists, dignitaries, and commoners like by Prince William and Catherine Middleton ignores. So, dito, nakikita natin dito sa picture na to, ang dami kasing politician na pumunta dito. Okay, kasi itong pamilya na to sa Great Britain, if I'm not mistaken, is para silang simbolo ng government and politics. And oftentimes, in trading, one of the effects in Europe. No? So, of course, kailangan siguro maging close or sip-sip ng other government sa government people na to. Okay? And let's talk about government in politics. So, power and authority. Ito yung dapat natin kasi yung mga government, especially in the set of politics, government has the power. They have the authority. Okay, so let's talk about this. Kasi yan yung meron sila na binigay natin sa kanila or nagkameron sila kaya nakapag-rule sila as our government. So, for example of this, the White House, one of the world's most widely recognized state buildings, symbolizes authority of the United States or the US presidency. So, next, let's talk about what is power. So, ano ba yung power? Hindi po yung power na superpowers. Okay? What's power? Kasi oftentimes kasi, your parent has the power to dictate on you. Kasi, they have authority too. Okay? So, ito, sabi dito, Nazi leader Adolf Hitler was one of the most powerful and destructive dictators in modern history, pictured here with the fascist Benito Mussolini in Italy. So, many scholars also adapt the definition developed by Max Weber, said, power is the ability to exercise one's will over others. Powers affect more than personal relationship. It shapes larger dynamics, social groups, professional organizations, and government. So, ito yung nangyayari. Ability to do one's will and to exercise one's will over others. Yung bita pag sinabi mo yan, parang na-influensyan mo yung iba. Okay? So maybe, related sa power authority, maybe nasa posisyon ka, kaya pag ikaw nagsabi niyan, mapapasabi mo talaga yung iba. And sila, tignan mo itong mga taong to. Leader kasi yan sila eh. At sabay pa dito, I think mga general yan sila. So, sila yung mga leaders. Of course, they have power because at first place, they're already in the position or the authority. So, yan yung power. So, meron na ditong types of authority. So, authority refers to accepted power, that is power that people agree to follow. So, of course, your parents have the authority to you because you agree. Parents nyo yan sila eh. Okay, so people listen to authority figures because they feel that these individuals are worthy of respect. So, yan din yung mga kalakip ng authority. You respect that person, that's why they have authority on you. You love that person, you have authority, and of course, you honor that person. So, generally speaking, people perceive the objective and demands of an authority figure as reasonable and beneficial or true. So, let's tackle about these types of authority according to Max Weber. So, ano yung traditional authority, charismatic authority, and legal rational authority? So, sabi dito, traditional authority, according to customs or traditions. No, so, nagkameron niya na authority na tao kasi according to customs, tradition. Example dito sa Marawi. Ano yung mga nasabi natin, may authority yan sila na tao kasi culture namin before and even until now. Nakikita mo yung mga dato at saka mga bay. Traditional man yan. Okay? Because it's according to your customs. They are historic personality, meaning baka since before pa yung in the history, yung lolo niya, dato na before, napamana sa kanya. Ganon. Patriarchy. Traditional positions, position of the authority. Position pa rin, parang ganon. How about charismatic authority? Based on leaders' personal qualities. Meaning, nakikita mo yung leader na yan, iba to. Na parang may something dito. Example, sinasabi natin dito na si Duterte is a charismatic leader. I don't think so. How about you? Marami naman. Lahat. Dynamic personality. Na yung personality niya talaga parang yung personality na tao na ito marunong mag-lead. So, example dito, Napoleon, Jesus Christ, Mother Teresa, and Martin Luther King Jr. And of course, we have this type of authority, legal, rational authority. Authority resides in the office, not in the person. So, since may position siya, they have authority. Nasa position siya, may title siya. For example dito, mga bureaucratic officials, President ng US, modern British Parliament. So, according siya sa office of opisina. So, sabi dito, traditional authority is accepted because that has traditionally been in the case. Its legitimacy exists because it has been accepted for a long time. Example pala nito is si British Queen Elizabeth. Kasi oftentimes dito, traditional sa akin na, yung napamana, example, she inherited based on the traditional rules, succession for the monarchy. Napamana sa kanya yung monarchy kasi nga, before pa yung lola, mama pa niya, lang siya napamana sa kanya. So, oftentimes dito, it is related to the tradition, authority, and, nire-respeto siya ng mga tao. Okay? So, meron natin ditong tinatawag na patrimonialism, a more modern form of traditional authority, which is traditional domination is facilitated by an administration and military and purely personal instruments. So itong form of authority nito, kasi nga, hawak niya yung military. Okay, an administration. So, still, it's a traditional pa rin. So, example, before, yung mga nagiging general before, yung mga nagiging hari before, naging warrior muna sila. At warrior man to namin. In tradition kasi, pag war kasi, kung sino yung warrior, siya kaagad. Okay, so yan nangyayari. By tradition, by customs, siya yung traditional authority natin. Kasi siya yung matapang. Parang ganun. How about charismatic authority? Is accepted because followers are drawn to the leader's personal qualities. The appeal of charismatic leader can be extraordinary. Parang iba talaga, may divination term, may power, inspiring followers to make unusual sacrifices, to persevere in the midst of great hardship. So, example dito is Jesus Christ, Martin Luther King. Yung talagang, kaya nilang magsakripisyo talaga. And nakikita mo sa kanila, they are good model. Na parang wala kang masabi. Yun. And of course, we also have rational authority. So, yun yung sabi ko. Power made by legitimate laws kasi nasa position ka, nasa batas, sa written rules and regulation in terms of in this type of authority, power is vested in particular rational system, ideology, and not necessarily persons implementing. So, ito yung sabi dito. Nasa office ka, nasa batas, naikasundin ka, nasa rules, so, ipa-follow ka namin. Nasa office ka, nasa position ka. Ganon. It's all about rationality. Okay? Reasonable siya naman at legal siya. Okay? So, that's a types of authority according to Max Weber. And of course, let's talk about the forms of government. Kasi, baka alam na natin ang forms of government is federalism, yun lang. Yun na alam natin. Of course, democracy, may mga ganon. Of course. So, okay, ganon. So, former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein used fear and intimidation to keep citizens in check. Okay, so ito yung si Saddam. So, meron din dito tinatawag na anarchy. Okay, so anarchy, ito yung absence of organized government. So, wala siyang government. Walang government society. No, but it is much harder for individuals to agree upon. Kasi nga, walang government, walang leader, walang susundin. So, lahat kayo gumagawa ng standard kung sino yung susundin. So, nagkakagulo. Magulo talaga sa mga anarchy lang ng mga forms of government. So, monarchy is a government which single-person monarch rules. So, example dito, sila Queen Elizabeth of Great Britain, single people lang sila. Okay, so, ito yung sila yung mga position nila dito, mga kings, queens, princess, so, sila yung mga dito, and prince. So, usually, monarch claims the right to the title of the hereditary. So, sabi ko nga, di ba, hereditary lang to. So, yung nakita natin kanina, yung kanila Queen Elizabeth, na napamana lang to sa mga kuan nila, ninuan. Mga remnant, it's according to tradition. So, part din siya ng tradition. Traditional authority din kasi siya. Kumbaga, nahuhulog siya dyan. So, of course, meron din yung tinatawag na constitutional monarchies. Or meaning, government of nations that recognize monarchs, pero kahit pa monarch sila, meaning they have already the title, the pure power, but still requires this figure to abide by laws of written constitutions. Monarchy sila, of course, they are called princes, pero under pa rin sila ng greater constitutions. So, example natin dito is si Queen Noor. Okay, Queen Noor of Jordan is a Dowager Queen of his constitutional monarchy and has limited power authority. She is noted global advocate for Arabs. So, siya dito. Itong si Queen Noor, under din siya sa higher constitution. Okay? Ano yung mga higher constitution? Yung mga nakapagsunduan nakapagsunduan ng mga bansa, nakapagsunduan nila na nag-unite sila. Ito yung constitution dito, usapan natin to. Ganun. So, of course, meron itong tinatawag na oligarchy. So, the power, ito yung tinatawag nyo, kung pamilyar ka sa palaging sinasabi nyo yung oligarchs kayo. Oligarchs daw, yan, ibig sabihin, by the way. The power is an oligarchy. In an oligarchy is held in small elite groups. So, kung sa namin yung elite group, oftentimes, mga maliliit lang sila na group, mga powerful. And saan ang gagaling yung power nila? Mostly sa military power, economic power, mayaman sila, marami silang militar, and the like. So, di ba, ang mga example natin dyan is yung economic power, mga businessmen. Okay, sila yung mga tinatawag, oligarchs din yan sila. Tinatawag natin yan silang oligarchs kasi nga, they are this small and elite group na oftentimes talaga, they can dictate talaga ano yung mangyayari. And maybe pagtatakbo sila, ang dami nilang supporters, gano'n. Kilala niyo siya? Sino to? Si Putin siya, no? Support from prominent Russian oligarchs propel leader Putin to the power. So, yun ang suporta pala ng Putin is mga oligarchs, mga mapangyarihang tao. Of course, meron dito yung dictatorship. Power in dictatorship is held single person, isang tao lang or very small group that wields complete and absolute authority over a government or populace after the dictatorship rises to power, usually through economic power or military might. So, similar to similar din sa absolute monarchies. No, pero, dictatorship may be even corrupt, di ba? Pag nakita natin mga dictatorship talaga, parang kami rin ng corruption, control yung gobyerno. So, meron din tayong totalitarian dictatorship describes more ambitious, oppressive style of dictatorships that attempts to control all aspects. Yung talagang lahat ng aspects, pati pagsusuot mo, saan pwedeng pumunta, kontrolado yan lahat. So, meron tayo dito sa North Korea. Controlled lahat na hindi pwedeng makapasok sa kanila yung ibang. Controlled talaga lahat. Totalitarian dictatorship talaga. So, Dictator Kim Jong-un of North Korea was charismatic leader of an absolute dictatorship. His followers responded emotionally in his death. Anyways, of course, meron din democracy. No, is a form of government that strives people to provide all citizens with an equal voice, like Philippines. Okay, so, politics. Ano yung politika? Pag narinig mo yung word na politika, ano yung nasa utak mo kaagad? Yung politika talaga yung nakipag-away sa dahilan ng away ng parents ko. Well, your parents made the politics wrong. And it's your parents that has the problem, not the politics. Okay? Because politics means studying of a nation's groups, underlying social norms and values, a group's political structure and practices. So, yung mga tao lang po ang nagpadungis ng politics. Ikaw ngayon, naririnig mo to, yung parents mo nag-away dahil sa politika, kasalanan yun ng parents mo, hindi yun kasalanan ng term na politika. Because the right term of politics does not really hurt. Okay? But instead, it helps us to learn more about politics, power, and authority, government, and of course, our society in the face of sociology. Okay? Of course, in democracy, in politics, in connection to that, of course, there is this voter participation. Kailangan iboto para magkamero ang politics, kailangan ng political system. Race, gender, and class issues. So, di ba ito yung one person, one vote? So, still fair new today. So, of course, meron din tayong theoretical perspective ng government and power. So, ano ba to? So, sabi pa nito ni, si Kwanto, si Durkheim, often called father of sociology, viewed government as an interdependent with other many parts. So, since ito man yung ano ba yung meaning ng interdependent? Having many parts. Ano yun na functionalist perspective? That is, functionalist and structuralism perspective, meaning many parts talaga, meaning structure. Okay? Structuralism. So according to functionalism, the government has four main purposes. Ano yung purpose ng government? Talaga planning and directing society. First, and of course, meeting social needs. So of course, sila yung nagpaplano na yun yung budget, paano binabudgetan yung each departments, yung DSWD ba yung first, military, education, pinaplano yun ng gobyerno, dinadirect nila every department. Ito yung gawin nyo, dapat meron kayong mga programa ganito. And of course, meeting social needs. Nakikita natin to na piniperform to ng government. For example, wala ng bigas, nag-i-import, nag-i-export, yung mga ganun, para magkameron ng enough goods yung mga tao. Of course, maintaining law of order, kaya yung government natin, nag-i-invest talaga in military kasi to maintain law and order. And of course, managing international relations kasi hindi lang tayo yung nangyayari sa ating society ngayon, hindi lang ito apektado ng society natin. Maybe walang ma-import ngayon, walang pagkain, kulang yung gasolina kasi in other countries hindi sila nag-supply sa atin. At baka kulang tayo sa international relations, hindi nag-aaway sa each country, wala nang supply sa atin. Nangyayari yan, nagkakameron tuloy ng inflation, bumabagsak yung economy natin kasi because of this international relations. May course na ganito yata, IR, international relations. So, functionalists view government and politics as a way to enforce norms and regulate conflict. Pero iba ang nakikita dito ng conflict theory. Philosopher and social scientist Karl Marx was a seminal force in developing the conflict theory perspective. He was prominent on conflict in general because he felt that it was the only means of promoting positive change and for the unprivileged. Marx did not agree that Durkheim's notion of religious independence. He instead saw society as exploitation and strife. Kasi nga, we put people with authority, oftentimes, kami na exploit and strife. So, yan yung nakikita ng conflict theory. And, of course, we also have here symbolic interactionism. Other sociologists study government power relying on symbolic. So, example, which grounded in the works of Durkheim, symbolic interactionism pertains government focus on attention, figures, and emblems. So, examples, pag nakita mo yung meron sasakyan isang presidente na number 1 yung plate number niya. Pag nakita mo yan, presidente ka na. Pag nasa ka, isang politician yung isang tao, so ano yung symbol na nakita mo dyan? Pag isang tao, leader. So oftentimes kasi government, even politics, giving us a meaning. Na example, kung politician yung isang tao, karangal-rangal. Or example, kung politician yung isang tao, ayaw ko dyan, mga korap yan. Baka yun yung may naisip natin. And oftentimes, that kind of government giving a symbol. Okay? So, example, yung mga government natin, yung sinusuot talaga na, barong Tagalog, they are formal. So, meaning ba, yung formal ba ng mga tao is they are bright, brilliant people. So, what kind of symbol nakita mo sa government? Ano yan? So, can you share your answers? So, of course, isa dito sa mga symbolic dito is symbolic trees, doves, wedding rings. Imagine dito, represents power and authority of the United States. No? Example, may eagle pa. In American flag, the seal of the President of the United States. So, may mga ganun nakikita tayo in the Philippine flag. So, in the Philippine flag, maybe nakikita natin dito is unity or the like.